Dr. Gilchrist, first of all, what was the best part of growing up in Ames?
Ames was just a great town with amazing people. I always tell people it was a magical place to grow up. It was small town feel, Midwest sense of practicality, sensibility, with amazing opportunities and people. You know, growing up, we lived in West Ames. You could go to Visha. We could bike on our BMX bikes to McCarthy Lee Park. We went to Hilton Magic Cyclone basketball games. Could go to the Octagon, do pottery, had great schools. But also every presidential candidate came through Ames. You could see the Rolling Stones or Paul McCartney. And you'd be going to school with, the janitor's son, but also, a professor who just won an award or Pulitzer Prize winning author. So just an incredible place with amazing people.
So one of the sports you participate in is track and field, and I know you did a lot of things. Were you president of a school council or the
Oh,
president of your
yeah, I
class?
was.
Okay,
Yeah.
I know you did a lot of things, but you go out for track, and one of the things people remember you for is the race where you ran down Sarah Gray in the state championship that helped propel Little Cyclones to the team title. Do you have memories of that? People didn't think you were going to catch her. I didn't, and it kept coming up, coming up. What do you remember?
I remember we went into that. I think there was 5 or 6 events left in the meet. We were defending champs. Ankeny was clawing us down, and I don't think the coaches wanted us to know how tight that race was. But Schmaltz came up to me right before and says, "Ashley Gruneman just won the shot put. We're still in this." We ended up winning 4 of the last 5 events. We had to place third in the 4x4 to be able to win, and I was just kind of like, "Okay, we can still, we can do this." And I went out, starting line. It was a hot meet, really hot weather that year. And she just took off. And I was like, okay, this isn't part of my game plan with Schmaltz. I was like, I just got to keep running my race, keep running my race. And I've always had a great kick. And she just kind of started coming back to me in the third lap and then the bell lap. I just really turned it on and I could tell she was starting to slow down. And I was like, oh my gosh, we were in this. We've got this. And it was my last race as a high school student on that blue track. Everybody wants their spikes to be blue at the last race of the season. We had a bet with Coach Dewey that we were going to shave his comb over off his head if we won that meet, and I think we got our photo on the front page of the Ames Tribune cutting his hair after we dumped a cooler on him. So it was such an exciting meet. It was great, great race. It was a fun way to end it. We were all so happy. We really felt like we fought for that win.
So you first went to Iowa, but then you came back to Iowa State. Why did you come back?
My coach at Iowa, who really got me serious about running in college, she was great, Rochelle Roberts. She took a job somewhere else my sophomore year. I was injured that fall. I had a red shirt. I was thinking about changing majors. I was pre-med, but looking at biophysics. And I called Coach Lee, and he said, "Hey, we're happy to have you back." I think growing up in Ames, I felt like I had to leave a little bit, and was so happy to come back, be close to my family. My little sister was still running at Ames High School, and it was just neat to spend those next 3 years back in Ames and running for the Cyclones. It was a great time there. I loved my team, my teammates.
Well, Division I track, though, is a step up uh, from high school, no doubt about it. When you look back, do you have a personal highlight or the things that you possess in your mind that's affirm that choice?
Yes, definitely. With Coach Lee, he really worked with me individually. The rest of the team was great. We had a great 4x8 showing my sophomore year at Drake. We all ran personal bests. I remember in a 2:11 in the 800 on the 4x8. We got second to Michigan, like by hair. But definitely my highlight for me personally was qualifying and running at nationals in the mile and getting 13th. That was for me the highlight. Just really seeing how far I could go in that race. I loved the mile. That was my favorite race so far.
Well, why medicine? Take us through in a succinct manner how you got to where you are today.
Sure. I've known since I was 7, when Dr. Paul Kellner was my pediatrician at McFarland Clinic that I wanted to be. Initially, I thought a pediatrician, but always a doctor. And then as I, progressed through high school and college, my sister was an epidemiologist at the CDC in Atlanta, got interested in infectious disease. I did a Fulbright scholarship in West Africa studying malaria for a year after undergrad. And I did parasitology research at Iowa State at the vet school. I loved tropical medicine, infectious disease. So I ended up in Emory in Atlanta near the CDC, thinking that would be my route. And then my third year of medical school, I heard the surgical rotation was the worst, that surgeons weren't the nicest people. So I was going to get that out of the way first. And then I actually loved that rotation, being up at 4 in the morning, being in the operating room, using my hands. And I thought, wow, this is going to be a great year if this is the worst rotation. But I realized that was my favorite rotation, and ended up pursuing a career, surgical career in urology for women. So not at all what I thought when I was a second grader in Ames, that I'd end up being a urologist. But I love working with my hands. Medicine just to me is about helping people. It satisfies a personal sense of curiosity, my passion for science, and healing people. So I feel so lucky that I still enjoy my career as much now as I did when I started 25 years ago. So,
Dr. Gilchrist, we really appreciate uh, kind of paring down a spectacular career that we could do this interview for an hour, no problem. But we really appreciate it and paring it down. And those of us tonight in the Ames Public Library are thankful that you did.
thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. And thanks to everybody in Ames, my parents, coaches. This has been such a gift to be part of the Ames High track tradition and Iowa State as well. Thank you.
What was the best thing about growing up in Ames?
I think it was a lot of things, but I think mainly the people, to be honest. I went to Crawford Elementary before it closed. So we had a class of 13 kids in my sixth grade class, wonderful teachers. Um, and in high school, I really found a group of really neat people that were involved in all sorts of things. So in band, in track or cross country or other sports, and then certainly academics as well. And I just feel really fortunate to have had such a great group of friends in high school. And then just the people in our neighborhood. I mean, Ann Campbell lived just up the block from me. Brian Campbell, her son, was in my grade. And she's a remarkable woman, as you know, and just a lot of adults looking out for us, I think, too, just in the neighborhood and in the town. Small enough that people knew most people, but not so small that it was suffocating by any stretch.
So you ran track at Ames High.
Yes.
One of the things that we remember about your time is winning the Drake Relays 100 meters. Okay. And I was there when you got in the block, and I didn't think you were going to win. I thought of you as like a little bit longer distance runner, and you showed me the empirical evidence that said that you were the fastest. What do you remember about that race?
Well, I remember that no one knew who won at the end because I only beat Taria by 1/100th of a second. So we didn't know for quite a while who had actually won. So that was part of it. Yeah, it was quite a thing. I was not expecting to win either.
So you choose to go and stay in Ames and go to Iowa State University and to run track and field. I'm interested because, as you know, Division I track and field is a major step up from high school. What was the driving force of you wanting to do that while still shouldering a significant academic load?
Well, I think that the fact that I could, I mean, it was really a remarkable thing to be recruited from any schools. And to be able to, I could go to Iowa State for free, basically. So I was offered a full ride scholarship for track. I had a half ride academic scholarship. So I took the academic scholarship and then had the rest with track. And so that just made it so much more economical. And Iowa State's a great engineering school. So I was looking at other places like Brown and Minnesota and Rice, and I still would have had to pay quite a lot. Would have had scholarships at all of them except for Brown. The Ivy Leagues don't do scholarships for athletics. Um, and I looked at the Brown track team, and I realized that our high school team could beat the college team, and that they didn't have an engineering school. So I realized that was probably not the smartest choice. So um, Iowa State ended up being the best choice for that reason. But I had a little trepidation. Going to college in the same town that I'd grown up in. I had kind of, the truth be told, thought I wanted to get out and go somewhere else. But in the end, it worked out great. I mean, it was really nice to be able to, on Sundays when the dorm didn't serve dinner, I could go home, have dinner, do my laundry, see my parents, so that was really a nice bonus. And my parents were never the type that would try and get in, overbearing by any stretch. In fact, they didn't ever call me when I was in college. If I finally said, you can call me if you want at some point, but they wanted to make sure that I didn't feel like I was under the microscope, I guess.
Your Cyclone track and field high, what do you own as what you're most proud of?
Well, it's kind of funny. There was an indoor meet. The only event I ever won in college was a 600-meter indoor at that new indoor facility that we had. And so I think that was probably my most memorable, just because 600 probably is my best distance, and it's not a distance you get to run very often at all. It's only indoor at some of the meets, but not the Big 8 or Big 12. But it was a good distance for me, and I enjoyed that.
Well, you were engineering major. Why medicine?
That's a great question. So I had redshirted my indoor season for track my freshman year, and so I had a fifth year left, and so I did that. And as I was doing my fifth year, I realized that I should have thought about something like medicine, because I'd always thought I wanted to do environmental engineering, which you could do through chemical engineering. So I was chemical engineering major, but it wasn't until the fourth year that you could do any classes in environmental engineering. And so when I did those, I realized that it was not quite what I was anticipating it would be. It was much about wastewater management, which is great and really interesting for people, but not something that I was quite as interested in. And then I was doing a minor in biochemistry and realized that I really enjoyed that, and thought, I should have thought about something like medicine, but I didn't have all the prerequisites that I needed for that at that point. But then was lucky enough to get a scholarship to go to England and did a second undergrad degree in physiology, and then decided from there.
Harvard, Oxford. Did you find going in, weren't you at least daunted by the challenge of those places?
Sure. But I think, my upbringing and my background from Ames High and from Iowa State stood me really well. I mean, chemical engineering, as you know, is a pretty tough major. So I was no stranger to work and to time constraints with running track. I didn't have a lot of free time between that and extracurriculars and things as well. So I found it really interesting at Oxford. It was the most creative I'd ever been asked to be in a science, because you would read primary literature, so 10 or 15 journal articles, and you'd go have a 1 hour, well, you'd write a 10 to 15 page paper on it, and then you would go talk to a professor for an hour about it. And that was the tutorial system. And they would ask you, well, what do you think about this, with the way they did this experiment? Is that how you would have done it? How would you go from there? What would you do? And so they actually wanted to know what you thought, which is very different from, memorizing things and just applying problem solving, So I think it was interesting. The medicine itself, the engineering background actually is pretty helpful for that too, because a lot of it is problem solving. It's kind of three-dimensional problem solving, but really with what drew me to it was more the human connections and those connections over time with people, and that's why I ended up in family medicine, because you really get to know whole families, and you're trying to figure out not just what the best workup is or the best treatment, but what's going to work for this patient, and making shared decisions with people to make sure that you get people to be as healthy as they can be.
So this is a little unfair, but the last question is if you could just give us an idea of what you're doing now, who you are, what you're doing now, and why you chose to be where you are.
Sure. Well, that is a circuitous route, but when I did the second degree in Oxford, the third day I was there at the International Student Orientation, I met Pierson-Bruner, who is now my husband, and so we moved from Oxford to Boston so that I could do medical school. He was an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer for years. He was trying to decide whether to do a PhD in literature or to go to law school. He ended up going to law school, also at Harvard, and then so we graduated at the same time. And then he worked at a big firm in downtown Boston for a few years until our son Cullen was born. And then he was more interested in getting into academics. And so his first academic job was in Texas. So we were at Texas Tech for 3.5 years. I taught and practiced there. And then he got a job at Washington Lee University in Virginia. And there was no medical school there. So I was a primary care doctor, and I was working half-time because at that point we had 2 children, young children, and it was a great place to raise kids. And then Georgia recruited Christopher again for the law school at the University of Georgia. And when he was offered that, we realized that there was a new medical school in Athens, which is where University of Georgia is, and so I could go back to teaching, which I really love. So I like seeing patients, but I really, really love teaching medical students. And so that was really a great fit for me because I've spent most of my time teaching. I do still see patients a little bit. I work with the internal medicine residents at their outpatient clinic, and I take the first and second year students out into the community to do free primary care in their first 2 years. So I get to get a little bit of both, but get to see that growth of the medical students is really fun.
Well, first I want to thank you. I live at 518 Ash, so part of that whole neighborhood. I'd pass your old house every day on the way to work.
Wow.
And I just would conclude by saying that, Leah, you honor your parents' legacy every day.
Well, thank you.
Yes, and we thank you for taking the time to do this.